Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda are once again engaged in dispute.
After 2 years of relative peace, fighting has returned to the Libyan capital.
Fighting in northern Mozambique is worsening a humanitarian crisis.
South Sudan was founded in 2011, but 2 years later, forces allied to the president and vice president began fighting each other.
On the brink of civil war, that's a warning about the situation in Burundi at the moment.
Fighting in northern Mozambique displaces thousands of people,
including a strike that killed 2 Congolese children.
Ivory Coast faces a real risk of a return to civil war.
Violence has intensified in recent months.
A power struggle between rival governments triggers fighting on the streets of the capital Tripoli.
Renewed fighting between the DRC army and the M23 movement.
Fighters have been accused of indiscriminate killings.
That civil war has now led to the near collapse of the country.
If you're a black man, you should have asked yourself this troubling question, which is, why is there always a war in Africa? I mean, if you go to Google and type in civil war in Africa, you are likely to get to this Wikipedia page, and all you have to do is to scroll down. You see, there are more conflicts going on in Africa at any given period of time than every other continent of the world put together. The question again is, why?
The commanders cry out, "Watch it, baby, the commanders are coming."
First, we have to remember that every human being on Earth today originated from Africa. According to the US National Geographic, our ancestors lived in Africa for at least 160,000 years. Then, about 60 to 90,000 years ago, the very first group of humans to migrate out of Africa left the continent. Now, this is what we have to understand. Our ancestors used to live in little tribes of maybe 100 people or less. And there were thousands of these small tribes on the continent of Africa. Before the first group of people left the continent of Africa, there were thousands of little tribes. And you have to remember that these little tribes did not like themselves. They usually fight each other, kill each other. So it is very safe to say when the first group of people left Africa, they only travel with their tribes. Because of this, when a few tribes of humans travel to Asia, to Europe, or elsewhere, then you are having behind in Africa thousands of tribes that remain on the continent. What I just explained right now is the reason why there are just 6 ethnic groups in the entire United States. But my country alone has 250 ethnic groups. Think about this. China as a country is having population that is much more than the entire continent of Africa. But the whole of China is having just 56 ethnic groups, while Africa is having more than 3,000 ethnic groups. Let me give you a very simple analogy. Imagine there is a house that has 3 rooms in it. The first room has 2 people living inside it, while the second room has 5 people living inside it. But there is this third room that has 17 people living inside it. Which of these 3 rooms do you think is going to be more peaceful? The answer is very obvious, right? You see, the number one reason why there are so much conflict in Africa is you are having too many ethnic groups occupying the same territory. Think about this. 3,000 different ethnic groups means 3,000 different, many times, conflicting interests. 3,000 different culture, 3,000 different belief system, 3,000 way of life, many times, hundreds, if not thousands, different religious belief system. What this gives you is different group of people, thousands of them, living in the same geographical location, and these people are so different that there is always a reason to have disputes.
The increasing violence in Ethiopia, particularly in Western Oromia, as well as in Tigray, poses significant risks for civilians. First of all, as more and more people begin to organize along ethnic lines.
The ongoing clashes between the Pokomo and Oromo communities.
Before the unrest erupted in Blue Nile, the western region of Darfur had already seen months of ethnic clashes.
More than 70 people have been killed and dozens injured in what is believed to be an intercommunal violence in a village along Niger's restive border with Mali.
Another reason why there are so many conflicts on the continent of Africa is because Africa has the most natural resources of any continent. Yeah, at first, this seems like a blessing, but if you can sit back and look at what natural resources means and how it is usually located in each country that has so much of them, you start seeing the problem. You see, natural resources is usually located in a particular section of a country. And don't forget, I have told you that every country on the continent of Africa has tens, if not hundreds, of different ethnic groups. So what you usually see is that there will be a country that has 300 or 150 different ethnic groups, but this country is having natural resources which belong to a particular ethnic group. Then the federal government of that country will go to that territory and tell the people, hey, we have to nationalize these resources. Then these people will feel cheated and they will start conflict.
In a heavily fortified compound, we found dozens of fighters for the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, known as MEND, armed to the teeth. They say they want the billions of dollars the Nigerian government makes from oil exports redistributed to communities in the region.
For us to understand how this works in real time, let's use my country as an example. Since 1956, when Nigeria discovered oil, till date, about 60 to 70% of our national revenue has always come from oil. But there is a problem, which is 80 to 90% of our entire oil comes from this tiny region of the country. Then the federal government of my country went to these people and told them, hey, these resources belong to Nigeria. Then these people tell themselves, no, this resources does not belong to Nigeria. It belongs to us. The next thing is they are feeling cheated. And because they are feeling cheated, they have to resort into, conflicts.
The federal government have decided to cut away all our wealth and decide to give us peanuts. Please allow us to manage our resources.
This is my own property.
No, it does not belong to everybody. These things are found on the land of the people.
This is our land! This is our land! To the Nigerian government and its leaders, be informed that the Niger Delta region is never a conquered land for any man born of a woman.
This oil is our own.
The situation I just described to you now is the reason why there is always conflict or even civil war between the people who have the natural resources in my country and the federal government of my country. But there is still one more problem. If you go to Google and type in what is a nation, this is what you are going to find. A nation is a large body of people united by common descent, history, culture, or language, inhabiting a particular country or territory. By this definition, people who live in a country should be people who are similar in culture, in belief system, probably in history, sometimes in language. And if you check most other countries of the world, you'll find that people who live in different nations of the world usually have the same culture, the same tradition, or at least similar belief system. Unfortunately, the opposite is the case in Africa. When it comes to Africa, people who live in our different countries are entirely different people. Why a part of the reason for this was because of what I have told you earlier. When our first ancestors left the continent, they have thousands of different tribes left behind. Now, another thing that added to that is the fact that most of the map you see in African countries today were never created by any African. It was arbitrary map created by colonial masters just to help them to manage the territory which used to be their colonies. For example, before 1900, what you know to be Nigeria today used to be different kingdoms. You have Oyo Empire, you have Benin Empire, you have Inri Empire. However, on January 1st, 1900, British, to help them to manage their colony, put together these different kingdoms into two protectorates, Northern and Southern protectorates. By 1914, this guy decided that, yeah, maybe we can put everything together. Maybe we can put everybody in the same basket. Then he merged together what used to be Southern and Northern protectorate, and his girlfriend suggested to him that he should name my country Nigeria. And that is how you put together like hundreds of people who have nothing, absolutely nothing in common. You put them together and call them a country. What I just described now is similar to what happened to probably every country in Africa except probably Liberia, that was never really originally African country. And what this leads to is very simple. You just imagine that there is a room where 17 different humans are living. You are talking about 17 people with 17 opposing interests, probably 17 different religious belief systems. And these people have to live together on that same room. I tell you, you will need a miracle not to have conflict in that room like every day. So far in this video, I have shared with you what I think are the reasons for consistent conflicts on the continent of Africa. I talk about resources, which is a big thing. Our resources will belong to certain people, and the entire country want to share it. And these people will be hungry, and they will resort to weapon. Then I talk about the fact that originally every human originated from Africa, and when the first set of people, our ancestors, left the continent, they simply left behind thousands of tribes, which is Africa today. And these people are so different. They are different in their culture, the belief system, many times in the religious belief. They have different interests. Everybody wants to protect their interests. And don't forget this, human beings generally don't like each other, especially when we are different from one another. So when you put a whole lot of people who are so different in the same room, there is no way they will not lead, themselves into conflict. Then I talk about the arbitrary map, which, the European colonial master created. Now, at this point in the video, somebody may want to ask me, do you really think there will ever be a period in the history of our continent when the continent will be peaceful? And the answer to that is, unfortunately, no, probably never. There will always be tension among people in Africa because of the reasons I have explained to you. But we can figure out how to minimize this conflict. Maybe if we recognize that people who originally own resources will feel entitled to it, then we appreciate them more than everybody else. If we recognize our problem and try to understand that we are different, too different in fact, then we try to see situations from other people's perspective. This happens between humans, like individuals, all the time. You meet somebody who is different from you, and the only way you can have peaceful coexistence is to see the situation from their perspective. If you want to stay on your own lane, on your own interest, then there will be conflict. So I really don't think there will ever be a period in the history of Africa when there is no conflict. But I think we can understand our problems and try to minimize conflict, especially if we give priority to dialogue instead of weapon. Thank you so much. My name is Steve Courage. If you like my videos, you'll probably like some of my books. Check them at the description box. Thank you very much.